I'm told that, I guess, following the airing of this clip, that your brother's life actually also was ended as a result of an airstrike. And you have your mother and other family members who are on the ground doing the work of the relief work that he had undertaken. So I just want to start by giving you what feels so meaningless in this moment, my condolences, my prayers, my heartfelt pain, and support for you and your work. And we have just learned from the World Health Organization that the conditions in Gaza now meet what the international community defines as a famine. We have also learned this morning, as another release, that there's an incredible lack of drinking water available to people there. Talk to us about what you're seeing on the ground and the immensity of the work that you're facing right now.
Uh, Thank you. The clip got me a little bit emotional because my brother Sheikh Mahmoud was assassinated. This was not an accident. Somebody sent a drone, waited for him outside the house, and killed him on the spot.
My
He did
God.
not deserve to die. He leaves behind a legacy and seven kids. The youngest was 3 weeks old when he was killed. So we grieve this. We know the injustices a lot of people of your listeners have seen in this country and the senseless killing, that's man-made suffering that's happening in Gaza. And what we are seeing right now is all engineered suffering in Gaza on behalf of the Israeli army and their ally in this current administration that are enabling the famine and the genocide. This is not just a misfortunate situation where the Palestinians don't have enough food. This is engineered so they do not have enough food by denying the aid and attacking and discrediting any entity that is able to bring aid, but also put in a production, theatrical production, hiring influencers to fly from America to say there is no famine in Gaza while they
Mm.
are on Olympics. These influencers and saying the Palestinians don't have famine. It is real. More than 200 Palestinians were killed because of malnutrition and conditions complicated. And some of the Palestinians who remain in Gaza have irreversible conditions from this famine.
My
Remember,
God.
this happened because the Israelis denied the entry of food since March. For about 4 months, no aid was allowed into Gaza. Our family at the Gaza Soup Kitchen, despite our pain and loss, we sourced food from what's available from Gaza, whether it's by foraging, whether it's by maybe working with local farms, getting some grains like lentils and white beans, and essentially keeping the community alive. We do have about 11 kitchens. We reduced them in July to five because there simply wasn't enough food. And it's miraculous that we were able to serve food, but the scale is really with the UN and other American NGOs. And, we continue to pretend aid is complicated in Gaza. It is not. We continue to say, oh, this is about aid, this is about militants. It is all lies. We can talk about specific Israeli talking points, but this is really preventable. And lives are at stake, not only by Israeli drones and tanks, like we saw a few days ago when they bombed the hospital live on camera. They killed
Mm.
journalists. And then they said, oopsie, we screwed up. This is not somebody shaving and then just cutting themselves. And 2 weeks prior to that, they killed a similar number in Gaza. I'll stop
Mm.
there and have this conversation going. But there's a lot of rage within me. But I do know that Americans don't do well with people of color who's upset just like I am right now.
Okay, you saying that is what brought tears to my eyes, because prior to this, we had been talking about conditions on the ground for Black people here in this country. And I remember back when we were at the height of the Black Lives Matter movement, that it was Palestinians who were providing via social media instructions for Black protesters as to how to navigate tanks in the cities. It was Palestinians who were providing insight to Black Americans about what to do with tear gas and what the munitions that folks were finding on the grounds look like. And so, despite the fact that our communities are worlds apart, and perhaps if we were closer together, we might find many things to quibble about, I think at a base human level, hearing about your brother's assassination in that moment and thinking about what's happening in Gaza, you realize that at the very basis, there is a humanity and a lack of humanity that seem to be greatly in tension here in ways that are significant. For this audience, can you help explain to us what would be happening if there were a community of people navigating the sorts of hunger that folks in Gaza are navigating right now, if there were not these blocks preventing aid from coming in, what would typically be happening with an aid effort like this?
So in regular days, there's about 608 trucks that will be allowed into Gaza, and people, entities like UNRWA, UNRWA, would receive the aid, put in the warehouses, and then send a text message to say, Hanny, we have a food parcel for you. Come today between 2 and 5 p.m. to collect your food parcel. And it will be orderly, where there is not going to be crowding and they're not going to be safety concerns. But right now, safety is a priority, and gatherings always brings the attention of Israeli instruments of death, quadcopters, drones, you name it, and then people will collect their food. What has happened is the Israelis allowed zero trucks to go in for about 4 months, and that like everything in Gaza was consumed. All the pasta was gone, all the rice was gone. There was nothing, and people would just keep themselves alive. Even 1 kilo, that's about 2 pounds of sugar in Gaza, would cost you about $100 because there is not enough of it. Here, you buy at the grocery store about $1 a pound. But in
Mm,
Gaza, they pay a lot more than that. And remember, they've been in this nightmare, or what experts really call a genocide,
yeah.
and they have not been making money for 2 years, almost 2 years, and the aid is disrupted. Also, the supermarkets are gone. Even if you have money, like if you have family, they send you money outside, you're not going to be able to go to the grocery store, because here's what happens. When you announce you have food and it's a safety concern, people are going to be like, hey, I need to grab this food because chaos, because nobody is going to loot a bag of flour when it costs $5, which is the regular price. But my own father will loot a bag of flour if the price is $1,000, which we've seen in Gaza. So bread became like a gourmet meal in Gaza because it was denied, and people basically consuming things like leaves. And this is all man-made. This is not because we had a drought in Gaza. And basically, and this was said in Hebrew, the Israeli government said they want to make sure to inflict as much pain on Gaza. So we feel that we will surrender and raise the white flag. They do not tell you that they've destroyed basically 80% of Gaza. They've
Mm.
dropped the equivalent of 6 Hiroshima-sized bombs on Gaza. And basically, they're just waiting for us to apologize for the people who killed more than 60,000 Palestinians. Their leadership is wanted for war crimes in The Hague. And somehow the US government goes and puts the judges, sanctions on the judges. And I think the US is much better than that. I think the American public disagrees with some of these policies, but and the US, this administration admitted there is a famine and these hard conditions, but they refuse to do anything that will alleviate the suffering. They've started doing airdrops. Guess what? These airdrops are nice production. They make the news, they make the headlines, but they don't make the impact, because all the air dropped in Gaza does not fill 58 trucks, and they're 100 times more expensive.
Wow.
But it feels good. Like if you're Australia, hey, we did our part for Gaza. We dropped some aid in Gaza. But they're a lot of them feel unable to act. When this nightmare began, I thought there was a power in Europe. And I look now and I say, no, they don't really have any power, because every single leadership from the right wing to the left wing in Europe does not like what's happening in Gaza. But they can't do anything because it is all in the US's hand, and the US refuses to pressure the Israelis to do the right thing.
When you're faced with conditions like that, conditions that and I'm going to say seem hopeless, because I'm an eternal optimist, and I guess that's a privilege to be able to have such conditions in my own life that I can still tap into optimism, right? So I acknowledge that. When you're facing conditions like this, where it seems like the help that you thought at one point might be there is not there, when the most powerful voices that could speak on your behalf are not speaking on your behalf and are instead acting in ways that are encouraging the oppression that you're facing, what does liberation look like? And I don't even know if liberation is the right word. What does restoration look like? What does the vision for your future look like? How are you all discussing what comes next? Or are you even able to at this moment, considering the enormity of the present circumstances that you're navigating?
Well, obviously, that's a good question. We, the Palestinians, are talking about one, burying our dead. There's hundreds of Palestinians still caught in the rubbles months after the bombing because nobody feels safe to go dig out the bodies. We need forensic to figure out who's who. There is a lot of unknown bodies that people are burying right now. Three,
Mm,
we need to remove the rubble. There is a lot of rubble that we can bury and then maybe reuse in the water, meaning reclaim some land from the sea, maybe enhance the port. As Palestinians, we all wanna a technocrat leadership in Gaza. We feel that all these politicians led us astray, and we need people who can build, rebuild, business backgrounds, folks who are Palestinians, folks who are from Gaza, who care about this. And somehow, none of the actors in the US government have talked to any Palestinian. They're talking about
mm,
us, we're outside the room. It is a bunch of,
mm,
sorry, some Israelis and some of their Jewish cousins in America here who are in real estate and wealthy, and they're talking about our future and zero Palestinian in the room. I challenge this. They've consulted zero Palestinians. They say, oh, the PA, we're not going to talk to them. They just
mm.
attacked Ramallah, by the way. There is no hostages
Wow.
in Ramallah, and they went and they just destroyed and injured and killed, maybe not killed, detained a lot of people. So that tells you where it is about subjugation and domination. It's not about, rightfully so. We want the hostages to go back to their families. Also, who's gonna bring back my siblings? We have not
Mm,
have dealt with that sorrow. I, like so many Palestinians, we bury ourselves in service. I don't feel alone when I do this work. There's hundreds of thousands, maybe in the millions, Americans who rally around us, people who donate, like the report said, to raise money for the Gaza Soup Kitchen. I hope people go to the Instagram, to the Gaza Soup Kitchen to see updates. But also, we're not alone. Look, there's a coalition. It's called it's a Jewish rabbi for a ceasefire. About 1,000 rabbi have signed this, asking for a ceasefire. This is not just like a lot of people are hurt by this. You've seen celebrities speak out, despite the fact they shut them down, they cancel them if they speak, and only their crime is children should not be starved or killed. Oh my gosh, you're
mm,
taking a political stand. It is a very dangerous place right now for Palestinians. And by the way, it's not only the fight, the battle is not just there, it's here. I'm also reading about a Palestinian American gentleman in Chicago that they're revoking his asylum case. And I don't know the circumstances of that case, but we've seen the young man, the young child in Chicago that was gunned down by some guy who heard something about the Palestinians, and the three young men in Vermont who were shot, and many more. We've had
right.
many friends who lost their jobs because they were the kafia or they had a watermelon insignia. And that's sort of the ridiculous thing. We've seen universities be using Palestine as a wedge issue, like Harvard and some of those universities. You've seen it. They lumped it
Yep.
with DEI, and then it became like, what do we do right now? Who is there to listen to us? And
Mm,
despite the fact the last administration did not do much for us, they've listened, they've helped bring this genocide, they've armed it. I did feel there
mm,
was people who would listen. They would at least take a meeting. It may not change the outcome, but this administration, unfortunately, and it pains to say this, they have not invited any Palestinian voice into the conversation. It's like we don't exist. And I'm sure some of you listeners would relate to this.
mm. Well, yeah, I think our listenership can relate to that a lot. Having your future decided by people who benefit from you no longer being in that space or even existing in some cases. And that's something that I think a lot of Black folks in this country in particular can resonate with and can understand. We are, of course, going to be sharing the social media contacts for the Soup Kitchen. Nubia, I just dropped that in the show chat. Amina, if you could please make sure that we get this posted as well. And this is one of those conversations where there's no naturally neat conclusion, because at the end of the day, you are still going to be doing the work of trying to collaborate with your family members there, providing food for people. And you said something that I think is very insightful for the rest of us, which is that you have to bury yourself in service. And we've been talking a lot about what it looks like to live in a country where you are seen as expendable, and when you are surrounded by people who have a history of benefiting from you always being at the bottom rung of society. And one of the challenges is the weathering that causes on your heart, your soul, your spirit, your body. And we have been studying here on this show about how doing acts of service, engaging in building the institutions, thinking about how we show up for people, that is where, one, we find solace, but it's also where the solutions to problems that we probably couldn't figure out on our own are also born. And it feels like you are living that and you're embodying that for the rest of us. As we come to an end of our conversation, what is your greatest hope? Obviously, if people are going to donate, and I really encourage people to go to GazaSoupKitchen.com, GazaSoupKitchen.com. What do you want the international community to know about the efforts that you're engaged in right now? If you could just say one last thing, or for this conversation, if there's one thing that you could say in this conversation that you need us to think about and consider the most, what would that be?
Well, thank you again. The sooner the Israelis realize their well-being is connected to the well-being and the safety of the Palestinians, and the sooner the Palestinians realize that their well-being is connected to the safety of the Israelis, the sooner we will have peace. You then have you cannot be a human being and watch the atrocities in Gaza and say they've deserved it, they've had it coming, and then go at home, kiss your kids, and say goodnight. This is unacceptable. And Lurie, like mentioning the service, last week, I was fortunate to do a service project in DC in Southwest to prepare backpacks for kids, disadvantaged kids. We prepared about, my friend Irene invited me, and we went to a church where we prepared 900 backpacks. 500 of them are going to a local mosque, but the rest is going to the local churches. That one was the one break I had to take off my brain off Gaza and just do something in the local community. And I want people also to focus in their local community. Yes, help out people outside, but also really just take action. Spend your dollars where your values are. That's really critical. People should not be doing business with bad actors who make statements, and they tell you, they make political statement the moment it serves them. The moment you need them to make a statement for you, they're like, oh, we're not political. I leave it there. I'd love to continue this conversation some other day, but this has been a joy to be in your program.